I'm being blamed for one of the biggest thefts in my family, and you probably won't believe who really did it. My own brother. My parents, my relatives, everyone is convinced I stole the money. And honestly, I can see why they found it so easy to believe. I'd been screwing up my life for years. I ignored advice, coasted through college, partied too much, and failed classes. My parents thought at least I was studying, but I was wasting their money on stupid stuff with the wrong crowd. In the last hour, I tried to pull myself together, extra credit, retakes, just enough to graduate. Somehow I did. I walked away with a degree, a mountain of student debt, and absolutely no plan. After graduation, I slipped right back into partying. No job, no savings, no responsibility. Debt collectors started calling nonstop. When I couldn't pay rent, I was evicted exactly a year after I finished college. I came up with a solution. Lie to my parents. I told them I needed money to pursue an honors program and that it would be a good investment in my future. In reality, I wanted to pay off my student loans. They refused instantly, telling me my course had been pointless from the start. So I turned to my big brother. Danny had been working with my parents at their clinic for years. He's 10 years older than me, a successful surgeon with a big house, a wife, and a baby on the way. My parents adored him. The family adored him. He was everything I wasn't: disciplined, brilliant, kind. I was the dumb, lazy troublemaker who could never measure up. I told him everything: the debt, the collectors, the failed jobs, how badly I'd messed up. I expected him to yell, but he just sighed and said I should come home and tell our parents the truth. Absolutely not. They were already disappointed with me. I was terrified they'd disown me. I refused. Then he suggested a compromise. Come home, pretend everything was fine, start working for him at the clinic, and he'd help me with the money I needed. It sounded like a lifeline. I stuffed my life into a duffel bag, headed home, and built an elaborate lie about where I'd been and what I'd been doing. Danny knew the truth, and he even helped me polish my fake story so our parents would buy it. I started working at the clinic. A month later, Danny told me the money was ready. I didn't ask questions. I just assumed he was helping me out with his own cash. He said he'd handled the transfer and told me I could use it to pay off my debt. I logged into my account, saw a huge balance way more than I'd asked for, and felt like I could finally breathe. But when I tried to make the payment, it was rejected. Confused, I called the bank. That's when everything fell apart. The representative told me a much larger sum than I'd requested had been deposited and then quickly wired out to another account. My account had been used as a pass-through, and now it was basically empty. I was stunned. How? Why? And then it hit me. I'd given Danny everything. My account details, copies of my documents, signatures. He had everything he needed to move money around in my name without leaving a trace. I was still trying to get my head around it when my bedroom door flew open. My mother stormed in and slapped me so hard I saw stars. "You lying thief!" she screamed. I didn't understand what was happening until she said that Danny had come clean that morning about the money I had stolen, my fake stories, and my secret life. Every ugly thing I'd ever confessed to him in confidence, he'd twisted into a perfect narrative that I was the family criminal. He'd even planted my old college warning letters around the house: poor grades, disciplinary notes, missed payments. He used my real failings as props to make me look guilty of something I hadn't done. My mother called me a fraud, a disgrace, a mistake. She said she wished she'd died giving birth to me so she wouldn't have to live with the shame. Then she dragged me to my father's office. He barely looked at me. I knew this day would come. "You're no son of mine," and he said. Then he told me to get out of his sight. They left me alone in the office while they made phone calls, and all I could think was, I'm going to jail. When Danny showed up an hour later, I begged him to tell them the truth. He played dumb so smoothly it made me sick. He acted shocked, like he'd just learned I'd stolen the money. Then in front of me, he offered to help my father file a theft report against me. I dropped to my knees. The thought of prison terrified me. I knew I wouldn't survive it. I told him the money wasn't mine, that Danny had moved it, that he was the one who emptied the account. I begged them to call the bank. They did. And of course, the bank said the transactions were made by me. Danny had been careful. He made sure everything pointed straight at me. And with my history, my lies, my failures, everyone believed him. I reached out to the few relatives who still talked to me, explained everything, and begged them to talk to my dad. They said they believed I'd tried to change, but stealing from the family was crossing a line. Their solution was simple: return the money and they'd support me. I had no idea where the money even was. A family meeting was held. It felt like I wasn't even in the room, just a case file they were reviewing. Most of them argued I needed to be turned in to teach me a lesson and protect the family's reputation. The only person who stopped them was my grandmother. She didn't defend me. She looked at me with pure disgust. But she said sending me to jail would only create more scandal. That's the only reason they decided not to press formal charges. Instead, they banished me. They bought me a one-way ticket out of the state and warned me that if I ever claimed to be part of the family again, they'd have me thrown in prison. I was cut off completely. No contact, no money, no home. I hit rock bottom. I had nothing, no family, no friends, no job, and still the student debt hanging over me. And the one person I thought would help me climb out of the mess, my brother, was the one who had pushed me off the edge. That was a year ago. It took that kind of brutal wake-up call to pull myself together. I stopped drinking. I found a job at a hardware store. I've been clean for 8 months and employed for a year. The pay isn't amazing, but it's steady. I'm slowly paying off my debt. My life is boring: wake up, go to work, go home, sleep, but it's stable. I'm healthier than I've been in years, and I've had plenty of time to think. I know I messed up my life, but I also know what my brother did and how my family treated me was cruel and unfair. I was starting to accept that I would never be vindicated, that I just had to move on. Then something happened at the hardware store. 2 guys came in, talking quietly about a specific medication. They mentioned a clinic run by a doctor named Danny. It could have been anyone, but the name made my stomach twist. I overheard just enough to catch the name of the drug and looked it up later. It wasn't FDA approved. If it was my brother, he was playing a dangerous game. I felt this mix of anger and grim satisfaction. I'd wondered what he did with the money he stole. Now I knew. He opened his own clinic, and from the look of it, it was thriving. He'd gotten away with everything. I was the exile, and he was the respected doctor. 2 years passed after that before I got any kind of real update. My sister-in-law contacted me out of nowhere, asking to meet. I had no idea how she found me. When she arrived, she looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept in days. I thought something terrible had happened to Danny. She said he was alive, but deep in trouble. She admitted that when he started his clinic, he did it with stolen money and shady deals. Then he began buying and selling unapproved medication to make fast cash. She claimed she'd begged him to stop, but he ignored her. He practically moved into the clinic, surrounded by sketchy people, while she stayed home raising their child. She wanted my help. Apparently, she thought that because I knew where he got his startup money, I was the one person who might help him avoid prison. She asked as carefully as she could what might happen if she reported him. She knew I was now working in the legal field, just a paralegal, but still, and hoped I'd give her advice or somehow rescue him. I told her the truth. I wasn't interested in saving him. She'd stood by him when he framed me. They used me as a stepping stone to their dream life. Why should I step in now, she begged. If he went to jail, she said, she and their son would lose everything. I reminded her we had a big family. Someone would help. She shook her head and said that if the authorities dug deep, the whole family's finances could be questioned. They might lose everything. I left that meeting torn between anger and temptation. Did I really want to be the one who pushed the dominoes over? Did I want to stay silent? 2 months later, I had my answer. I decided to report him. At first, I considered an anonymous tip, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized I wanted my name attached. He needed to own what he did to me and to everyone else. I wanted him to confess to the family that he'd framed me. Right around the time I made up my mind, my mother messaged me, begging me to come home. She said it was urgent. Curiosity got the best of me. After years of being treated like I was dead, suddenly I was important. When I arrived, my parents looked older, smaller. They tried to play the concerned parent role, saying I must be tired and needed rest. They guided me to a room to lie down. Being back in the house made my skin crawl. Everything connected to me had vanished. No photos, no trophies, no trace I'd ever lived there. I decided I wasn't going to let them control the conversation. After I'd washed up, I called them to the living room and told them to be honest with me. They confessed they knew about my sister-in-law's visit. They knew what Danny had been doing. They knew about the illegal meds, the shady clinic, everything. And they knew he had framed me years ago. He'd finally admitted it, to them at least. My mother cried, saying they all felt terrible about how they treated me and wanted to make things right. I pointed out that when they exiled me, the whole family had been there to condemn me. Yet now, when it was time to apologize, only my parents showed up. I said I wanted to see everyone, every single person who'd called me a thief. I wanted to look them in the eye and tell them I'd been innocent. They agreed. At the family meeting the next day, I stared down the room. Aunts, uncles, cousins, people who hadn't so much as asked if I was alive in years. I asked them where they'd been when I begged them to believe me, why it was so easy for them to erase me. Why not one of them checked in? I admitted I've made plenty of mistakes, but I never stole from them, not a cent. They didn't defend themselves. They didn't apologize in any meaningful way. They just shifted, stared at the floor, or looked away. Danny sat in a corner, head down, avoiding my eyes. He finally spoke in a soft voice, saying everything was his fault, not theirs. He said he was now facing the consequences of his actions, that his clinic was under investigation, his electronics were about to be seized, his assets scrutinized, and the family business dragged into it. He got down on his knees and begged me to help. He asked me to testify on his behalf, to take over his share of the business temporarily, to make it look like he wasn't as involved, so he might get a lighter sentence. He claimed he'd always been jealous of me, which was laughable. It was just another angle, another script. His wife cried. My uncle, a priest, started preaching about forgiveness and how mercy leads to salvation. Suddenly, forgiveness mattered now that they were facing real losses. I remembered how quickly they'd thrown me away. They'd never given me a chance to defend myself. They'd deleted me from their lives and their memories. Yet now that their golden boy was in trouble, I was expected to save them. I stood up and told them I was done. My father yelled that I owed them this. I laughed. This was the same man who, for years, crushed every dream I had. When I wanted to work with cars and tried to get an apprenticeship at local garages, he called them behind my back to make sure they didn't take me on. He sabotaged me and then shamed me for being aimless. I raised my voice right back and told him I didn't owe them anything. They weren't the righteous, honorable people they pretended to be. They looked down on poor people, dodged taxes, and gossiped about each other constantly. Their perfect image was a lie. I left. I turned off my phone and checked into a cheap motel. I knew they might try something desperate to shut me up, and I didn't want them knowing where I was for long. The next day, I found out my motel room had been broken into. My laptop was smashed, my clothes ripped apart. They were amateurs and they were too late. I'd already gone to the police months earlier. After my sister-in-law first came to see me, I'd started quietly gathering everything I had. Old bank records, emails, messages, anything that could help. I talked to my boss and to an old friend of mine who happened to be a detective. We planned everything carefully. By the time my parents called me home, I'd already made a formal statement and handed over evidence, including the bank records from the time I was accused of theft. The police then wired me up to record any confession or incriminating detail when I went back to my family. That reunion, it was as much for the investigation as it was for me. Within days, my brother and my parents were arrested for their roles in selling illegal drugs and smuggling. I expect many of the others will turn on him, if they haven't already, to save themselves. Fast forward 6 months. My brother is in prison. He got the maximum sentence, 10 years. He lost his medical license. All the assets he gained from the illegal business were seized. From what I've heard, some family members cooperated fully with the authorities, throwing him under the bus to protect their own interests. Now he knows what it's like to be abandoned, to have everyone turn away and pretend they never believed in you. My parents' clinic somehow survived legally, but their reputation took a beating. Patients left. Inspectors started visiting regularly. Their empire began to crumble. Meanwhile, I was named a state witness. My family begged and threatened me to retract my statement. Even if I wanted to, it wouldn't have mattered. The evidence was overwhelming. My sister-in-law showed up at my job once, yelling at me in front of customers. I had her escorted out and filed a restraining order against the entire family. In court, relatives who once called me a disgrace finally told the truth. They described how Danny stole the money, pinned it on me, and used it to start his clinic. Employees at his clinic testified about the shady meds and suspicious dealings. The whole thing was so clear there was no way out. After everything, I received compensation for the emotional damage of being falsely accused all those years ago. It didn't erase what happened, but it helped. I paid off almost all my student debt and invested the rest. I work as a paralegal now. The job is demanding, but I like it. For once, I'm building something for myself, not for my parents, not for their reputation, not for my brother's image. Then came the final twist. My mother somehow kept finding ways to contact me. I changed numbers and locked down my social media, but she always resurfaced. She called to tell me my father had died and had already been buried. I didn't go. I didn't answer her calls. She also told me he'd left the clinic to me in his will. I don't know if that was supposed to be a peace offering or a cruel joke. Why would I want anything to do with that place? The only reason they want me involved now is because Danny is in prison and they need someone to keep their legacy afloat. I'm done being their backup plan. I've decided to file a harassment complaint against my mother. For years, they made me feel worthless, and I believed them. I thought I'd never amount to anything because they said I wouldn't. Now I know better. I've changed my last name. I want no connection to them at all. I'm thinking about opening my own restaurant, something small at first maybe, but it will carry my new name. My name, not his, not theirs. If there's anything I've learned through all of this, it's this. When you've wrecked your own life, people will happily use that as cover to blame you for everything. But if you survive it, if you rebuild, you get to decide who you are and who you never want to be tied to again. Framed by My Doctor Brother, How I Took Everything Back and Watched Their Empire Collapse. A young man stands outside a crumbling medical clinic at sunset, police tape draped across the entrance, while in the background a smug doctor's face fades into prison bars, and the protagonist walks away, holding a folder of legal documents with a faint smile.